This year's Royal Christmas Day reveals the shock challenges facing the British royal family. There are feuds on both sides of the Atlantic, and it really does start to feel like things have collapsed somewhat in the 2 years since the death of Queen Elizabeth II. So we're going to analyse it all with Brittany of the Royal News Network today. But first, I think summing up some of the hilarity of what we're dealing with. This is Katie Hopkins as Princess Anne.
Ah, Princess Anne here, woman of few words, the Christmas family, thinking of my dearest late mamma. To Meghan, you'll never be a duchess. Please could you stop being a Costco Martha Stewart until the ginger one? Don't do impressions of large black women on the television, even if they are somewhat smaller now thanks to Monjaro. And to Charles, our family have hunted the lands for generation. We have shot birds, feathered things, deer, pheasants. Stop with the net zero shit. And that goes for your side bitch also. And to Andrew, if you could stop being a paedophile, that'd be terrific. Merry Christmas.
Oh, Brittany, Merry Christmas, by the way. You're looking beautifully Christmassy. I love it. And look, obviously, Katie Hopkins is a comedian, so there is a degree of hyperbole going on there. But actually, when I saw that video, I was like, there is something true. This is a royal family divided on so many levels this Christmas, right to the point that William isn't even wanting to stay for the lunch after the main church service at Sandringham. So let's get into it all, Brittany. But from a macro point of view, it is very sad to see the disintegration of the unity, which I guess Queen Elizabeth II and to a strong extent Prince Philip were always able to endear from their relatives.
I think you're definitely right, Dan. When it comes to this instance, I really think over this last year, yes, I think the family came together in 2022 when she first died, and obviously King Charles's coronation in 2023. But I think since then, we have seen this sort of fracturing occurring as people are sort of moving to sort of protect themselves and sort of manage themselves. And as the institution overall, I think, sort of has lacked the strong leader and direction. I think we've seen definitely a royal family that I would say is more in crisis than I thought they would be at the beginning of, let's say, last year or something like that. So it's just really a big surprise where things have gone, I think. And it's quite sad. It's like you're hoping to see unity, you're hoping to see a strong royal family, but I just don't know if that's necessarily there right now.
Okay, so let's start with the drama between Montecito and Windsor, because there has been so much briefing and counter briefing about what is really going on between King Charles and Prince Harry. But I think as we get to Christmas, Brittany, it is very fair to say that the way that Harry is trying to present things to the world is not accurate. From what I'm told, Brittany, there will be no big reunion on Christmas Day, virtually. I'm talking. There's not going to be a happy phone call. There still remains serious tensions, in part, Brittany, because Charles has not forgotten, and certainly Charles's team and Camilla have not forgotten, how Harry and Meghan used that brief reunion earlier this year to push a PR narrative. What's really going
Dan,
on?
there's so much here in this particular instance because you have Harry, who definitely, I think, 100% wants back into the British royal family fold. I think you have Meghan, who doesn't want to, Meghan, who I think doesn't want reconciliation unless she can protect her own interests, i.e., the title and maybe perhaps the title of her children. That's really the only thing she cares about in this particular scenario. And, I just feel so sorry for Charles because we don't know, obviously, how serious his cancer is. We got a great announcement about that not too long ago, but these could be the last years of his life, and he wants a relationship with his son. And anytime he tries to kind of bridge this divide, Harry and Meghan sort of destroy it for him and make it almost impossible for him to have a public relationship with Harry unless he basically, and I think again, this goes back to the tensions you were talking about within the family, causes tensions with William because it's like William, I'm sure, is like, we have to have some firm separation here between what is royal, what is Harry and Meghan. And Charles, in I think an effort to reestablish this relationship, is causing greater tensions in the family because I don't think a lot of people want him to. And it's just, you just had this very, very toxic, very divided circumstance here. And when it comes to Harry and Meghan, they will utilize any opportunity with the royals to exploit it for their own benefits. No matter if it damages Charles, William, Catherine, whoever, they'll do it. And so I think Charles should be much more aware of that, hopefully, than he was when he first tried. But he's just not going to get what he wants out of his relationship with Harry and Meghan at this point.
But isn't he right to actually put his foot down for once and just say, actually, things are better than they looked? Certainly earlier this year, when Harry was talking about, oh, the next year is going to be all about my dad, it was on this tacit understanding, Brittany, that this could be Charles's last Christmas. Now, you know, I have reported the cancer remains incurable. He is certainly not in remission. There will be continued treatment into 2026. But at the same time, Brittany, his prognosis is slightly better than probably what Harry was expecting. So as a result, it's almost quite crude of the delusional Duke. But again, he's using that to almost get more and to bargain with Charles and the British royal family more. Certainly, I think that is behind the extra push for security, for example.
Mm. Harry claims that he wants to come back to the UK for, you could say, the benefit of his family. But the reality is, and what Charles needs to make really, really clear to Harry, is that the future with the royal family as a working royal, as even a peripheral member, is just non existent. Harry needs to have private jobs. Harry is still constantly trying to relive basically his royal role by doing these cosplay royal duties. That's the only way you can really explain it. And if Charles lets this go on too long, he does risk Harry basically bringing the entire institution down. So Charles really has to figure out here what is the most important, which is the institution or his relationship with his son. Now, I understand how important the relationship with his son is. And I'm sure Harry is using a lot of these opportunities to try to wiggle his way back in. But how is he going to do that? Because Charles, I think, needs to know and understand that if Harry is only doing this all in the contingent that he gets to keep his title, keeps getting to do his cosplay royal routine, that only damages the institution and shows that his relationship with his father is not based at this point on actually having a personal interactions with his father. It's all about protecting himself and his own business um, interests and his own bank account. And I think that is something that Charles and the rest of the royals need to seriously consider. What are Harry's motivations here? Because I don't think they're good for him or the institution overall.
Isn't it shocking, Brittany, when you look at this from a macro level, though? There were chances for 2 reunions this year. There were opportunities. If Harry and Meghan had actually shown some form of contrition, admitted that they were in the wrong, Brittany, there was an opportunity for the relationship with Charles to at least get back on some type of positive grounding. Likewise, Thomas Markle. But they can't do it. They have a fundamental inability, Brittany, to ever admit they are wrong about anything.
They do. And it's so damaging to themselves. I mean, Harry in The Guardian says he basically has no regrets for what he's done over the last several years. And because he has no regrets, the man hasn't learned anything. And so part of the problem, I think, with Charles attempting to reestablish a relationship with Harry is that Harry has done wrong by his family. He's written a book, he's done a Netflix series, he said horrible things about them publicly many times for international consumption and turn their lives into punchlines. And there needs to be consequences for that. And in some ways, the world is enacting some of that. But Charles needs to not establish a relationship with Harry fully until Harry, I think, apologizes to him. If he doesn't do that, Harry is going to walk all over Charles. And I think that's already what Harry is attempting to do. Harry and Meghan have see no value in their other family members except for how it can enrich themselves. And so if you allow Harry in without him acknowledging fault, he'll just make the same mistakes again. He'll drag you through the mud again. And Charles, I mean, he just will have to just deal with the reality that his son is sort of gone at this point. There's not going to be a relationship. And there were several opportunities, like you said, for reunion, for
Mm,
reconciliation. But like the royals can't do it unless Harry and Meghan admit some sort of fault, unless they admit the things they've done wrong. They're still trapped in their victim narrative. And as we've seen, even with Thomas Markle recently, Meghan turns every situation into a victim narrative for herself. And the royal family can't allow Harry to do that. They have to be strong here. Otherwise, again, they'll be steamrolled by Harry and Meghan and their PR efforts.
And Brittany, we remember that is what William has always advocated for. What does seem very clear this Christmas, Brittany, is increasingly the Prince of Wales is operating a separate court. He has so much more power. He's doing things his way. The modernization effort has almost begun with or without Charles's approval. That certainly to me seems behind this decision not to be at the Christmas lunch, given William has briefed, or his friends have briefed and made clear that come him taking over the throne, lots of these royal traditions that were very important to Queen Elizabeth II, and Charles has tried to continue them to honor his mother's memory, will be out the window. And they are in some ways, Brittany, quite old-fashioned, I guess, and they very much focus on that idea of what your titles allow you to get, where you stand in the royal pecking order. For example, the presents are given out in order of royal ranking. The table settings, you find your place based on what time you arrive, and of course, the more senior members of the royal family are closer to where that dinner is held, so they get to their seats first, for example. And for William, those things are just relics of the past, and he doesn't necessarily have that same sentimentality about changes.
The video opens with a chilling statement: Harry wants back in, but Meghan refuses reconciliation. A clear fracture line drawn through the heart of the royal family. The emotion, pity for King Charles, and frustration with a son torn between duty and defiance. This isn't just about family drama, it's about the monarchy's survival. And Meghan? The script paints her as the holdout, the obstacle to unity. A royal Christmas that reveals more cracks than cheer. The holidays, once a symbol of royal unity, now a mirror reflecting feuds, power struggles, and an unraveling dynasty since Queen Elizabeth II's passing. Then comes Katie Hopkins, dressed as princess, and ruthless parody meets truth bomb. Her roast of Meghan, Andrew, and Charles cuts through the pomp with brutal British humour. Don't do impressions of large black women, she mocks a line that jolts, offends, and exposes how comedy still mirrors royal controversy. Even in laughter, the monarchy bleeds. Dan and Brittany peel back the polite curtains, revealing a family adrift without the Queen's iron hand. William reportedly skipping royal lunch. That's not scheduling, that's symbolism. The royal machine that once commanded global respect, now sputters under egos and generational rifts. Harry wants back. Meghan wants control. Titles, image, and power, the holy trinity of modern monarchy. The commentary hits hard. Meghan's reconciliation is transactional, not emotional. Charles' health looms like a tragic subplot, a king desperate for peace, sabotaged by his own bloodline. And William? Furious. The heir-turned enforcer, drawing boundaries between duty and disloyalty. Charles' cancer becomes the emotional currency. Harry uses his father's illness, not for bonding, but for leverage. Security demands, sympathy optics, all part of a calculated return to royal relevance. This isn't family. It's negotiation.
Interesting to consider, Dan, what the future reign looks like for William, because he said in his interview with Eugene Levy earlier this year that he's not that interested in history. And in some ways, it doesn't seem like he's that interested in tradition, because history and tradition often sort of go hand in hand. And I think there's definitely a way to modernize things while utilizing sort of the old, let's say, kind of framework that they used to have. But I almost worry, and I get the sense that I think William is almost going to do an overcorrection. He's going to overreact and overcorrect to such an extent that he's really going to whittle down what the monarchy is. And yes, some of the aspects of it are a little silly. Some of it is a little stringent and, binding in a way, succession and these sorts of things. But that's what makes the monarchy the monarchy. You cannot take away the order of the line of succession without ultimately disrupting the entire system in the first place. And I think the challenge for William, and one of the things I think I remain somewhat concerned about, is it's unclear exactly where he'll fall on that line. And again, I feel like we could definitely see a really large overcorrection from William, which is why he's sort of trying to already figure out, maybe in some ways, how that works behind the scenes, setting up in some ways a shadow royal court, which, as the heir in the future to the throne, makes more sense for him to do as he figures out within his framework what things look like. And that, I think, is something that somewhat undermines Charles's reign for sure. And it's obviously, I think, William at every event is going, okay, I like this, I don't like this, let's change that. And I don't know in some ways how helpful some of that will be at the end of the day. Obviously, things remain to be seen, but I think we could see some really large changes when William is king. Like, number one, I'm thinking about is he probably won't be head of the Church of England. I think he'll decline that, but that's just my speculation at
Totally.
this point.
And I think he won't be the head of the Commonwealth either. So these are monumental changes. Although, Brittany, there was an effort over the course of the year to try and convince us. I'm not sure if I'm convinced as a chronicler of William's life, but trying to convince us, Brittany, that he is leaning more into religion, especially in light of Catherine's cancer diagnosis and survival. She certainly has done, but do we believe he is going there, or is that the sort of very helpful PR spin from the courtiers who are like, holy heck, this guy is potentially going to be head of the Church of England. We've got to at least pretend that he's into this.
I mean, it's a very serious question from a spiritual perspective. I consider it quite serious. If you're going to be head of the Church of England, if you don't really go to church every Sunday, if it's not something that you value in your life, you shouldn't be head of the Church of England. It should be that simple. And I could see it definitely William going down that route. And if his PR team, like, if this is a decision he's decided to make, if this is not something he's interested in, I think William needs to take stock of himself and consider, okay, am I just doing this to appease people, or is this really like what I feel like spiritually? Because this is very important things. You're talking about, being a head of a church, leading the congregation. You're held, I think, to a higher standard when you do that. And if that's not something that you feel led to do, I mean, in the Christian faith, you are held to account for at the end of your days. And I don't think that will go over particularly well with the man upstairs. So I think that's a huge decision William has to make here in the future. A really, really big one. And I think an important one too.
Then we look at the wider family. And of course, it was hilariously portrayed in that Katie Hopkins video, Brittany. But from a perspective of this very small group of people who are dwindling in numbers, how much of a blow is it for the likes of Princess Anne and Prince Edward not to have their brother, now simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, his ex-wife, Fergie, who is popular amongst some members of the royal family, and potentially, we don't know this for sure, Brittany, but potentially not the two daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, and their husband and children with them for Christmas Day. Because whatever you think of Andrew, and certainly members of the royal family think a lot about him, not all positive, certainly from the perspective of Prince William, not positive very much at all. But he has been a fixture, he has been there, and it's one of the more brutal decisions that you would argue was forced on King Charles, cutting his own brother from a private Christmas celebration. But I think because of the botched handling of the Andrew affair over years and years and
Mm.
years, from a PR perspective, it had to be made. Doesn't make it easier, though, Brittany, on a personal perspective. And we believe that Andrew and Sarah Ferguson will be spending their last Christmas together at Royal Lodge in Windsor, which they have also had to give up.
Mm. And Andrew's situation is so challenging because you are so right, Dan, in saying that this is a problem that should have been handled years and years ago. It should have been dealt with years and years ago. They should have figured out either how to manage it, how to mitigate it, and these sorts of things. But it was one of those sort of holdovers from the reign of Queen Elizabeth that I think they weren't trying to deal with. They were kind of trying to leave it in the periphery, hoping it would go away. And I think this is a profound lesson for the royal family to learn is that sometimes things don't go away and you need to figure out how to address it rather than sort of having an ostrich head in the sand mentality here. And so when it comes to Christmas, I do feel sorry for Andrew because this is a private occasion. If exes want to come, obviously Peter Phillips has divorced his wife Autumn and he's going to get remarried. If Andrew wanted to come to the Christmas service, I don't feel like that should be an issue because this should be a private family time. They're going to church. I feel like that is something that should be considered sacred if that's what they want to do. But I understand how bad it is from a PR perspective. And I feel like, in my personal opinion, that the royal family let it get to this level where you do have to say, no, you can't come to, let's say, not only church service, but maybe Easter service with us because your reputation is so bad. It's just something that could have been managed so much better. And Charles just like he obviously Queen Elizabeth started it, but Charles sort of waited until the last moment. And now we have this situation where, the girls have to decide, do they spend Christmas with their parents, with the rest of their family? Like they want to keep their title. So how do they manage it? Like it's just a mess and it's just so unfortunate in so many ways because this could have been handled again years and years ago and then we wouldn't have to deal with this situation now. It's sort of a mess. It's a mess for the girls, it's a mess for Andrew and Sarah. And for the holidays, I'm curious what the girls will decide to do, but I understand, if they decide to stay with their parents, totally understandable. But they decide to hang out with their royal relatives, like that's understandable as well. But it's going to be tough for them, and I feel for them.
No, it really is. It really is,
Mhm.
Brittany. And I just keep thinking, isn't it interesting that in all of this, William wants his children, and remember, one of those three children is at some point going to be king. He wants his children not to experience the old fashioned royal Christmas at Sandringham, but I would argue the much more modern, more traditional, the more loving Christmas with the Middleton family. And it just strikes me as something quite significant, given that Harry and Meghan's children have never even experienced an English Christmas either. This is certainly the changing of the royal guard for good or ill.
Mm. It again, it's one of those situations, Dan, where we'll have to see how it eventually plays out. We can't make total predictions here yet because you have the possibility or the probability that in some ways, again, William is almost overcorrecting to such an extent that his children may not have, let's say, in some ways, as much respect for the monarchy, because part of the monarchy is these traditions that may seem somewhat archaic, but are incredibly important to the institution. And obviously, they're bringing their children to more engagements. I wish they would do it even more because I know I've seen in other European countries, in the Netherlands, Catherine Amalia attended her, she's only 22, just turned 22, attended her fourth or fifth state visit. And so it's one of those things where it's just a interesting perspective to see, I think, how other royal families, I think, integrate some of this more and more. Whereas William, I think, is trying so hard to achieve normalcy, which or at least normalcy like, the rest of us experience that he might sort of develop in his kids somewhat a disdain for aspects of the monarchy. And he's not intending to do that, but it's always a question of something that might happen at the end of the day. So it's just a curious thing to see. And we'll, again, see how this all plays out in the years to come.
Brittany, thank you so much. And of course, Brittany will be back next week as we unveil her brutally honest royal report cards for 2025. I'm so excited about that. Who's passed, who's got A+, and who's failed. So, Brittany, put your thinking cap on. We will do that next week. But a Merry Christmas, by the way, as well. I hope you have a wonderful day, Brittany, with your family. And I should say that even though it is Christmas Day, we are going to be with you, because I know it can be really lonely for some people on Christmas Day. So Lady Colin Campbell at midday UK time on Christmas Day will be revealing her second annual awards. She covers everything, obviously the royals, but also celebrities and politics and international affairs. But it's Lady C, so we're going to have a hoot along the way. You can be with us midday UK time for that show on Christmas Day. You can obviously watch it after too if you're with your family on Christmas Day, but I thought it was important to provide some special content on what can be a lonely day for lots of you. And we're a community here. We're a family here.
Harry admits no regrets. Meghan plays the eternal victim. And Charles, trapped between love and legacy. Until Harry apologizes, reconciliation is self-destruction. The monarchy can't survive endless Netflix confessions and victimhood branding. Forgiveness without accountability is monarchy suicide. Prince William, quietly building his own kingdom. His shadow court signals a silent coup. His modernizing, yes, but at what cost? Traditions once sacred under Elizabeth now deemed relics. Even Sandringham Christmas rewritten or abandoned. Revolution often starts with small rebellions. Then the exiled Prince Andrew erased from royal life. The decision? Brutal but inevitable. His downfall haunts the Windsors, the scandal that refuses to die. His daughters, trapped between blood and brand, must now choose loyalty or legitimacy. For the Windsors, even Christmas is a PR calculation. William wants his children to know a normal Christmas. But in stripping away the royal ritual, does he risk eroding the magic, the very mystique that sustains the crown? When royals become ordinary, monarchy becomes obsolete. The royals once symbolized unity. Now, they symbolize division. So tell me, do you think Harry and Meghan are justified in walking away?